Hey Atarians, 7800 Pro Gamer here, and this week I want to talk a little bit about the Hasbro era of Atari, when the toy company was trying to break into video games and purchase the name and IPs of Atari to help do so. Now this is an interview with myself, my co-host on the podcast, Vinny Vineyard, from Big and Funky Productions, and our guest, Jayson Hill, who is a PR manager at Hasbro Atari. But more than that, he was an avid Atari fan and video game collector, and was very much an advocate for Atari within Hasbro. He reached out to me, and I could tell he was, I don't know the word, hurt maybe? That not only I didn't mention the Hasbro era in a previous video, but that the new Atari glossed over it as well in the 50th anniversary collection, that celebrated the company in all its iterations. And I get it, Jayson was a part of a video game company that he loved, and I'm sure it was a dream job. So for his time with the company to not get acknowledged at all, has to be a kick in the joystick. But anyway, I just wanted to intro the video a bit. It's not my traditional style, it's an interview that we were going to show on last week's podcast, but it was a bit too long, honestly. And we didn't want to cut anything out because Jayson had some good stuff to say. So here it is for you all to see for yourself, uncut and unedited, in its full length. Oh, and I'll do a video in my normal style on the subject down the road, so look out for that. Okay, without further ado, here's Funkmaster V and that good-looking pro gamer talking Atari and Hasbro with Jayson Hill.
Okay, so this is exciting, John. We've got a picture in a picture. We're doing an interview inside of a podcast. So what you have found is a gentleman who basically did a video a couple weeks ago about the end of Atari. And a gentleman reached out to you and said, hey, I existed during this black hole period. And, you know, this just came out a year and a half ago. This one, everybody's praised this thing. It's the Atari 50th anniversary celebration. And it goes from the 70s to the late 90s. But the biggest question is, what happened after the Jaguar? And nobody ever talks about it. So we've got a guy who was a PR guy, if I've got it right, a guy who worked for Hasbro Interactive, which owned Atari. Basically, Atari at this point was some sort of cadaver, or it was they transferred the life force into another avatar Frankenstein body, and then the Hasbro Interactive basically went into Infograms, or however you pronounce that French company or whatever they're from. But this was, and nobody talks about what they did. And we've got a guy right here, right now. Is that, am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's correct.
All right, John.
Well, I think Jayson Hill is the gentleman here on the top, well, for us right now, the top left. And he reached out to me after my last video, like Vinny said, but you were more concerned about the Hasbro era of Atari. That's correct?
That's correct. I was hired by Atari Hasbro back in '99, and we don't get much credit for having existed and keeping the brand alive for a few years until it kept moving on, as it seemed like the brand just kept moving as time went on.
So you guys were basically doing CPR for Atari. Hey, we all have animals.
Yeah, right.
But you were basically doing CPR and releasing some things that were Atari games during what was the periods that you were kind of there at Hasbro?
I got to kind of set this up for you. Set the Wayback Machine for 1995. Hasbro decides it's going to put it together an interactive division, and they make Hasbro Interactive. They also bought a domain called games.com. Well, they started exploiting their IPs, Monopoly, Tonka. They had all of Milton Bradley, all of Parker Brothers. So you can imagine all the games that they had. Well, in 1998, JTS, that group that followed the Tramiels for owning Atari, sold all the IPs they had in the brand of Atari to Hasbro Interactive. This is spring of 1998. All right. A year later, they're trying to put together a few games. They're trying to get some things going. And that's when I got hired on to do the public relations for Atari Interactive. And also they licensed some Namco stuff and some Sega stuff. They did Frogger, which was a really big hit for them. And, as you can imagine, this was the CD era. So they were getting beyond that, having to buy the cartridge and so forth. And, that big investment that came with every game by using a CD instead. So I was hired on in May 1st of 1999 and I was Atari's PR manager right through till January of 2001 when Infogram, and you just drop the ES on the end on that French pronunciation, took over. Was that division was sold by Hasbro to them with all intellectual properties at that point.
So at one point, Hasbro Interactive owned every Atari IP that Atari Incorporated owned at that point.
Correct. I mean,
wow,
of course, as we know that the games and the incorporated portion separated in what was it, 93, 94, somewhere in there. Everything that was Atari right through the Jaguar was transferred to Hasbro Interactive for a grand sum of $5 million, I think, at the time. It looks like a bargain now. Yeah, it was change at that point for Hasbro, which, like I said, was a huge. And if y'all remember, Hasbro is the Star Wars toy company, so that's where their riches come from, quite honestly.
And they acquired Milton Bradley, and is that kind of where like Monopoly video games started to come out and stuff like that? Okay.
That 1995, they were meant to exploit the IPs of Milton Bradley, Parker Brothers, and Hasbro, in video game, either console or PC. A few Macintosh, but not as much of that.
Okay, so what Atari games were released during your tenure there?
That's what I was going to ask.
The very first one was an updated Centipede, and I don't know if you can see the thing behind me right there, but that was a 3D. Whoa, I've gotten something come up on my screen that I didn't. Okay,
you've got a virus.
Edit that out. Yeah, no, I've got a torrent that came up. But anyway, that was the first of the Atari games, and it was updated. It contained the original game, but it also had a 3D game on it, and it was released first, oddly enough, on the Dreamcast.
Oh, wow.
And then it was the PlayStation 1. I don't remember if anything else got that or not. But anyway, that was the first game that they came out with. They went on to do updated that Pong, the next level.
Yep.
They did Missile Command, which they didn't say it was the next level, but it was an updated one, or so forth. There was Breakout. What did they call that? Anyway, several that were Atari themed, and they even did a compilation. And I think it may have been the first compilation of Atari games on a console, which was PS1, if I remember correctly. They also did it on PC, but I was just thinking about console ones. But anyway.
Well, I remember the art. I remember the Pong art. That must have been a pretty good big hit, because I remember it was like orange and and it was like kind of squished lettering. I remember, in fact, I saw today on Facebook Marketplace, I'm not even lying, somebody was selling a PC version of the Hasbro release of Pong. So that's really wild. Yeah. That was kismet for today.
Well, what
it was go ahead.
Go ahead.
It was an interesting little game, I thought, the Pong the Next Level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I enjoyed that game quite a bit, and I've been talking to Vinny about it, to his dismay for Pong.
Shut up. Oh, is that the one you liked? Seriously?
No, that Pong the Next Level was pretty cool, I thought.
I gotta check that out.
Yeah, I had it on the PlayStation 1. It didn't really and again, we got one of the guys here that knows all about it, but in my vision, It didn't change things dramatically, but it kept things interesting with like penguins in the one level would help or hurt you and stuff. Just
getting away a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I guess my one question, how did the Centipede and Pong, how did those do for Hasbro? Were they successful, or
they did not do bad, but they were not great hits by any means. And we got a little bit of pushback of you're ruining the game because you're updating it. You always get that whenever you do something to it. But one of the things that was kind of interesting is, remember I told you in 1995 they picked up this domain, games.com. Yeah. Atari was to have been heavily featured on that service if it had gotten fully functional. I don't know if y'all remember the .com bubble and what happened during that time.
Yeah.
Atari, Hasbro dumped about $100 million into games.com.
Oh, wow.
Do y'all remember the South Park episode Underpants Gnomes?
Yeah.
You had, collect underpants, unknown sinner, profits.
Yep.
Well, the games.com was kind of the same thing. They dumped $100 million into it, and they didn't really know how they were going to make the money off of it.
Wow.
But at least that was the impression I got. That's my understanding of it. And
so let me stop you right there. So games.com was going to be like a Java-based, you log on to your PC and you could play all these games, and they have that now, but that was pretty wild back then with the internet.
In 2000, 2001, that was, it was pretty cutting edge stuff. And like I said, not everybody knew how that was going to work out and how you were going to really make that model work. It's better now, but back in 2000, 2001, not so good.
Yeah.
But like I said, these were all supposed to be a really casual pick up and play games, and Atari would have fit perfectly into this, as you can imagine. And that's one reason they had bought all the IPs, is that with games.com, this it would have been perfect match up with that.
Well, yeah,
but,
absolutely.
In the end, you got go ahead.
Go ahead. You
I was going to say, in the end, you with that $100 million investment, which is, like I said, the one number I kind of remember out of Hasbro, they weren't seeing any return, and it was at that point they decided to sell off to Infocom, and they ended up selling everything, including the Atari brand, for about $100 million. January of 2021, I think, was the year.
So they just wanted their money back. Okay.
Yeah, they wanted to get out with their money, get their money back and get out of the business. It's interesting. They ended up letting them. Hasbro Interactive had also bought things like Microprose, who did the Civilization series of games. Yep. They did a B-17 game where you could play any of the positions. They did a lot of different things. They had XCOM, which
and who was that? That was
Microprose.
Okay. XCOM's they're still making those.
Yeah, that's a big one.
They are indeed.
Yeah.
I think Civilization's still around too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I try to get into that. I'm not smart enough for that. And
I've never been that kind of gamer either.
Right.
I want to be, and I'm like, why is Gandhi blowing me up with atom bombs? I don't understand what's happening. But so you said 2021, was that right?
You meant 2001.
2001. So they sold to Infogram.
Yeah.
They sold it in 2001 so they didn't really lose any money. That's very fascinating. But even though that you guys only Hasbro was only around for what was that, 2 years? You guys
with Atari part of Hasbro Interactive had been around since 1995. Like I said, they did not get hold of the Atari IP until 1998.
So they had it for three. That you got Hasbro Interactive had it for 3 years.
Correct.
Ish. Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
Awesome.
So they released a few games. They had the idea for games.com. Mm-hmm. Was that generally it? Was it just we're going to use these games as part of our website initiative? And we're going to try a few PlayStation Dreamcast releases, or was there an idea of something more ever?
To my knowledge, no, I wasn't. I was promoting the games. I wasn't, privy to all of the inner workings, of course. I mean, a lot of it was I think, if I remember correctly, Frogger 2 came out under the
Swampy's Revenge.
Swampy's Revenge, I think, came out under Atari. A couple of others. The Namco licenses did not. They came under, even though they were classic gaming licenses, they came out under Hasbro Interactive. Apparently, Atari didn't treat Namco very well when in the
Yeah.
early 80s.
Yeah.
And Namco was not going to allow them to come, like Pac-Man was never coming out under Atari again.
Right.
So you
Right.
had things like Pac-Man Adventure in Time,
Yep.
the Dig Dug update. There was a Pac-Man plane update. I'm trying to think. Let's see, Worms Armageddon, I think, came out under the Atari name as well.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a Dreamcast, as a matter of fact. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, they used it on a few places.
Were you guys involved with Test Drive, that racing game, or was that after you guys?
I believe that's afterwards.
Okay.
So so you worked at Hasbro, obviously. You were in the PR side, so you might not know this. Did you get the feeling that Hasbro understood Atari, that they knew what they had with the brand? Or
I'm going to tell you a little story to illustrate kind of what happened. They bought it, of course, like I said, $5 million, chump change, really. But their legal department found out I had been an Atari historian and kept coming to me going, "Do we own this IP?" No, I kid you not. It was an odd thing. And what happened is, over time after Infogrom took over the company, really they only wanted the IP. They did not want the studio. They did not want the people. So over time, they got rid of everybody. I lasted until November of 2022. Others lasted a little longer. Apparently, though, legal kept coming over to PR going, "Do we own this?" And I'm going, "Y'all always told us this." I go, "No, Jayson always told you that." So,
and you said 2022. I assume you meant 2002.
Excuse me, 2002.
Okay.
Yeah, this
Just
would be.
wanted to verify.
Excuse me, sorry about that.
No, that's good.
This would be about. Yeah, they were not absolutely sure what they had. So.
Gotcha.
Well, it's very confusing. We're trying to. There's a thing that there's a little project me and John are trying to do right now, and we're like, "What the hell is Atari?" Because it's known under so many different names and so many people owned it, and it's like there were licenses that expired. I mean, a novice would come in and go, "Oh, well, Tetris is an Atari game," because they saw it in the arcade with the Fuji on it, and then you realize, if you watch the documentary, then you're like, "Oh, they only had rights. This was created in Russia," and the weirdest story ever. And so Nintendo had rights and Atari had rights. So it's very difficult. And no wonder the legal department was like, "What the hell's going on?" Because they also sold Battlezone for some reason and basic basic math or whatever. And it's like, who bought that? But anyway,
I wonder.
Yeah. So you've been an Atari fan. Let me ask you this, and we may go back, John, if you want to ask some more questions. But what do you think of Atari now in the last 2 years? What's been coming out with Wade Rosen in the game?
Well, I've been enjoying there's some fun stuff out there. I have a VCS 800 and I have a 2600 plus. I've got oddly enough, I bought everything. I bought the three. To my right is one of the big upright arcade 1-up 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
I also bought the
the game station.
The game station and the little arcade things, both the Nano and the Micro, I think is what the two are.
Yep.
And
you're a fan. Yeah.
Yeah, he's real hip with what's going on.
No, I'm a dumbass. No, you can edit that out. I just keep buying Atari.
Yep.
I mean, my most prized possession is I have a Pong unit from the very first one that they put out, signed by Nolan Bushnell and Bob Brown, who was the engineer on that one. So
now, what is your address? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, oddly enough, while I was at Hasbro and even at Infogrom for that first year, we continued to go to Classic Gaming Expo every year and display there and have a booth there and show what we were bringing out in the Atari line, and in Classic Gaming, the Namco brand, licenses and the Sega, Konami stuff. So
it's a wild time because I feel like Wade Rosen was quoted as saying he's not trying to hit home runs, he's trying to hit base hits. And I'm like, I think they are doing a good job with that. Yeah. It's like, let's keep it alive. Let's not try to come out and defeat Nintendo and Xbox. but let's get in the game and kind of and pump some lifeblood back into it, because I think there's a point. I know you want to say something, but the point that I think the problem that you might have had back then, I was going to ask you this too, is Centipede. There's kind of like things can get old, and then they become like 10 more years, they become alive again, if that makes sense. It seems like the Centipede, Pong, Breakout, when you were there, people were like, look, Atari was shoving this down our throats repeatedly for a decade. Enough with the Centipede. We want to get involved with Mario and shooting people with first person shooters. Did you think that was some of the problem you had too back then?
It may have been, and again, we had some pushback even from some old Atari designers, which I would meet out at Classic Gaming Expo. They go, "Why are you trying to mess up my game? Because it really didn't need fixing. It was fine the way it was." And of course, we're going, "Yeah, but nobody wants to buy it the way it was because they already bought it 5 times." Like you said, it's another little story. The moment we got Atari, and I got in there and was, I was recognized, of course, at the time as being one of the retro gamers out there who was a big collector. We'll get into that collection thing later if you want to. But the first thing that was asked was, when are y'all putting out a new system? Well, Hasbro had no interest in putting out a new system. They were, wanted to do some games and, exploit their IPs, but they had no interest in doing a system at all. But everybody thinks the moment Atari comes back to life in some new iteration, that the moment they should do a new system, and start trying to compete with whoever's the big guy out there. Can you imagine what it would cost to come up against Microsoft or Sony right now and put out a new full power system?
Oh, it's nuts.
No.
I think Atari needed to be put in timeout after the Jaguar, and then botching. In my opinion, they botched the Lynx. The Lynx was a superior system for once.
It was
in that niche, and they didn't know what to do with it. And it's like, God, you guys had the keys to the kingdom in the portable universe, and you botched it. So just sit on the side for about 20 years and then come back. So,
Well, some would say that's exactly what they did.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. So then I'm kind of getting hints of it. So the culture at Hasbro was very confused about Atari, what to do with it, or
again, they had ideas. They wanted to put it into games.com. They wanted to keep, putting out games, but again, the .com bubble probably killed us. Is what really killed us. They may have kept doing better things. I would hope they did.
Yeah.
We never got a chance to see that, of course. But .com bubble came along and everybody said, wow, we've just thrown $100 million down a rat hole. Yeah. And, I'm sorry, guys, we're spinning you off. We're selling you.
Was the .com bubble, was that associated with the Time Warner AOL debacle, and that was kind of the beginning of like, wow, there's really no asset with something like AOL, or was that something else?
I think that might have been something else.
Yeah, I think that was something else.
A lot of people were trying to get into the internet, and they thought they could make money off of it. And again, it was like that thing of, okay, we'll do this, and then there'll be this, which we don't know what it is, but then we'll make profits over here. And they could never figure out the middle part of, let's create something cool. Then here's how we'll sell it, which we can't figure that out yet. But then we'll make profits. But that was the idea. And nobody could quite figure that out at the time. It was just a bad luck, I guess, in many ways. And like I said, Atari was going to figure very heavily into games.com. That was the idea. Those pick up and play casual games that everybody could do over the internet.
So what kind of games that was there any talk of which games were going to go onto games?
I mean, a lot of it was going to be the standard IPs, Asteroids and Centipede, and those that, again,
Combat.
People, you didn't have to own it. You could just go off and play it. You could. And that
was it their intention to have independent game developers make new games for games.com? Period, or were they just looking into making old IPs come back?
That I don't know. I mean, I just know that Atari was supposed to be figure greatly into games.com, along with the other Hasbro Milton Bradley, Parker Brothers. Yeah. Oddly enough, we were actually in the place where Hasbro Interactive was the old headquarters of Parker Brothers when they were making cartridges for systems up in
wow.
Beverly, Massachusetts.
Oh, cool.
So we had at least had some, it was kind of interesting place to be, knowing that, this dates all the way back into the 80s, for video game history.
Right. Kind of
So
a cool
really
place
good stuff
to,
came out of there.
yeah, cool place to be at. So you had that cool place where the Parker brother cartridges were. How about, and you kind of mentioned already, you went to the retro game expo and stuff.
Yeah,
Outside of that, classic gaming, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Outside of that, how much was there any involvement with any of the old developers at all, or was it mostly just them yelling at you guys at the expo?
No, and the old developers did not. Though oddly enough, I met people who were working there who had been working for Milton Bradley and Parker Brothers. This one young woman had a Vectrex collection that I would have loved to have gotten hold of,
yeah.
but that belonged to her father.
Ooh.
When he had worked, for Milton Bradley, and I was like, I couldn't quite get it away from her.
Yeah, I bet.
But so we had some, we had people going back to the Parker Brothers and Milton Bradley time, but no, we did not have any Atari developers come in and help us with anything.
Gotcha.
Well, do you have any other questions for Jayson, John? I've got a end. Like
you got a finisher? You got a good way
nothing,
to finish him off?
Hey, that's PG here.
Oh, that's
baby.
right. Yeah.
I'm retiring at the end of this year. I'm really getting finished off here.
Well, I'm sure you've earned it with all the years you put in at Hasbro and stuff. I guess the only. Well, go ahead.
I got one more thing. I also worked at Philips Consumer Electronics in the old Magnavox building where Odyssey 2 came out of in Knoxville, Tennessee for several years as a PR person for Philips Electronics, Philips Consumer Electronics. So I've been close to video games, but sometimes not always with them.
Wait a minute. Yeah. Whoa. You said Odyssey 2 in Knoxville?
Yes, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Well, I mean, I lived in Knoxville for 30 years. I never knew that.
I was in there 11 years, and yeah, it was out the western side of the. It really got outside of the city, though. I don't know how much the city has grown since 1999 when I moved away. But
it's pretty big now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, oddly enough, Philips Consumer Electronics bought Magnavox, which put out the Odyssey 2 and even put out the Odyssey 3, but never produced it. I actually came up on a couple of those prototypes. Yeah. But so I like I said, I was working in the same building where Odyssey 2 came out of, and the CDI for that matter.
Oh wow!
Which
that was out of the same building.
Yes, all out of the same building. By then it was Consumer Electronics.
Right.
When was that? Right as I was leaving in '99, they had moved down to Atlanta, the headquarters, and they were beginning to close up that building. I don't know what happened to it finally.
Right.
You were in Knoxville when Tennessee won the football national championship.
Miracles do happen.
Yes. That was wild.
Wow.
I never thought that would happen with them knuckleheads over there.
I was always a big fan of Pat Head Summit and the Lady Vols basketball team, where they won a lot of things.
Yeah, they did. They were tremendous back.
They were terrific.
Well, I do think I have about 2 more questions, Vinny, and then if there's anything else Jayson wants to get into, we can. Then we'll let you finish off. I guess we haven't touched on it really, but at the sale to, and I want to say Infograms because that's how I've said it my whole life.
I know it always looks like it. Go ahead.
Yeah,
that's fine. We'll keep it Americanized.
So you said they sold off, and they really had no interest in Atari at all, correct?
Well, no, actually, I think their main interest was the Atari IP. And they also did get a limited period of time for use of the Hasbro Interactive IPs, or the Hasbro IPs like Tonka and Milton Bradley and Parker Brothers Monopoly, that sort of thing. And they got Microprose out of it, another good studio.
Oh, wow.
like I said, Civilization,
Right.
and XCOM, and those things. They got all of that. So they were very interested in getting the IPs that were there. And that's often what I tell people. I said, well, yes, they bought it. They wanted the IPs. They didn't want the people. They didn't want the place.
Right.
So over time, they, phased us out and laid everybody off, everybody that worked for Hasbro Interactive, which was a great bunch of people.
Yeah.
They were a terrific bunch of people to work with. They were very passionate and very, like to help, they liked, working together.
Did they move most of the operations over to France at that point?
No, a lot of it moved to New York, and they also had a West Coast presence at that time. Most of their presence now is New York, I think. But
Gotcha.
so that was, but again, I don't know that they were that interested in the games.com part of it, but they got all of the studios that we had purchased, and they got all of the IPs to make games with.
Right. And you said you lasted a year, which was longer, about a year roughly, was it?
It was from January 21 to November of 22, so almost 2 years with Infogrum.
Almost 2 years. What was it kind of, with you said they phased everybody else out. What was it, kind of hostile to you, or did you always feel on edge, or?
Yeah, I think a lot of us didn't really, the corporate culture changed rather drastically between the two companies. And one of the small things was, I don't know if you've ever lived in Massachusetts. It gets cold as hell in the winter. So in the summer, they would give us all half days off on Friday to kind of go have fun while it's still warm. So, and Infogrum stopped that. They stopped a lot of things, like the little perks like that, and they really tightened their belt on a lot of things like that. Like I said, it was the small things that changed the corporate culture there.
Gotcha.
And when they finally called me in and said, "Oh, we're laying you off," I'm going, "Hi, thanks." And, I'll find another job, thanks.
Yeah, right.
I didn't for a while, but it was like I felt a responsibility because Atari was still there.
Right.
And as somebody who loved Atari always, for many years, I felt I needed to stay with it as long as I could to do what I could for it.
I love this guy. I love this guy.
Yeah. God bless you.
When they finally laid me off, it was pretty much a relief, though.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a shame, but still, thank you so much for representing the company and keeping it safe.
Retro gamers have to try,
Right. Yeah, we have to protect what little we have left, I guess. And speaking of which, I'm just curious, because you're obviously a collector. You've kind of hinted at it. So what cool things did you acquire from your time with Atari? I mean, you have to have some cool thing you weren't supposed to take home, and it kind of found its
This thing behind me was one thing I pulled out of a dumpster. I also have a band. Remember when I told you Namco didn't want Atari associated at all with their stuff?
Yeah.
We accidentally made a banner that had Frogger, the Atari symbol, and Pac-Man on it.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
Ooh. Yeah, I salvaged that. I salvaged a lot of different things, as far as signs and things like that, banners and whatever I could out of that. And I know this is going to sound terrible, and because I don't know, they had, when they acquired the assets of Atari, they also got all of the records of Atari, and I mean blueprints, one of each game, or at least prototypes, all sorts of weird things. And I actually got to go and look at some of that stuff and take some, and got some. Well, I didn't, but do you know the guys that run the, National Video Game Museum, Frisco, Texas? John Hardy, Joe Santulli, Sean Kelly. They came in and did a lot of copying of, all kind of plans and everything,
preservation stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like we found information on another Crystal Castles.
Oh, wow.
Another Bentley Bear thing that was going to be coming out. Had all the concept art done.
Wow.
It was beautiful. I mean, we found things like the 5200 asteroids packaging plans.
Wow.
That's cool
which
stuff.
Never came out. It was amazing stuff to see and get pictures of, and actually it did exist, sort of things. Like the 7800 computer module.
Oh, wow.
Things
Oh
like
my
that.
God.
Got to see. But you see, what I worry about is what happened to that.
Yep.
It probably
Dumpster.
ended up in a dumpster somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Trust it keeps me up at night too. Trust me.
Well, they just
And I
they just
just found
found
out about it.
they just found. I don't know if you know this. They just found Lance Rehnquist with Video 61 was going through a bunch of EPROMs, and he thinks he found Road Riot for the Atari 7800, which was lost. So that's which is kind of a cool thing. He doesn't know if it works yet, but he did find a Road Riot EPROM at least. So that's kind of cool. That's really neat stuff when we can find that kind of thing.
And I hope somebody took that stuff home or saved it.
Yeah, I hope it got salvaged rather than thrown away. But oddly enough, all of the computer stuff was on the enormous, like 16-inch video tape reels, which you used to use on a computer, stick them up there, and that was your storage. There were boxes of those things. How you'd read them today, I have no idea.
Yeah, but
they existed in 2000 and 2001, 2002.
Wow,
they were there still.
All right,
what's out there.
I got two questions now because of something you said. John, do you have anything left for my?
No, that was pretty much I think what I had. Of course, I'll probably think of something 5 minutes after you leave, Jayson, but that's all I have now.
Well, you can always email them and we can include it.
We're going to stay in touch. Absolutely.
So, since you're such a fan, what do you think of what they're doing? And I don't know if you're aware 100%, but Atari, what are they doing with Bentley Bear? In the game Atari Mania, he's a bad guy. And then in the game Food Fight Culinary Combat, he's a bad guy. And it's like, this is the one guy that's like a mascot for the brand, and they're kind of making him a heavy.
Yeah, I mean, well, Charlie Chuck could have been a mascot, maybe, but Bentley Bear, much better. And, especially in that casual game thing. I'd love to have seen, I understand there's 7,800 homebrew out there for Bentley with a Bentley Bear adventure or something. So I don't remember the name of it right now.
Bentley Bear's Crystal Quest. It's unbelievable.
Okay.
And it was released momentarily on the VCS like 2 weeks ago, and there were some issues. So they're trying to get it on the VCS.
Oh, yeah, it'll be back.
Yeah.
Okay. I maybe ought to just get hold of it. But anyway, I wish there'd been a little bit better. Bentley Bear had been a little better treated, and I hope he'll be better treated in the future.
All right. My last question here is, since you're such a homer for Atari, what is your number one favorite Atari game, and what's on which system?
Made by Atari and on an Atari system. I know it's going to sound strange. I love the 8-bit computer.
A lot of people do.
I am a huge fan of 4-player Asteroids.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I love that game. Getting together with a bunch of friends and doing the co-op where you're all fighting together.
Yeah.
It's terrific. That is a terrific game. I love that one.
Oh, I bet. I'm thrilled with 2-player on the 7800, and you got 4-player.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you can well, as my wife calls it, you can turn into a cowardly blob instead of going for hyperspace. You shield out and nothing can hurt you while you're there,
right.
But of course you can't shoot either.
Right.
So like I said, there's some fun stuff on that one. I like that game a lot.
That sounds
as
fantastic.
An Atari game.
Sounds fantastic.
Very good. Very good.
Well, I think was that your last question, Vinny?
Yes.
So I'm thinking, is there anything, Jayson, before we wrap up here that maybe you were hoping we'd touch on and we didn't get to?
I think we got it to all of it. Again, we're talking about a very short period of time here, really. Yep. And again, the fact that we got both the Lynx and the Jaguar into the public domain.
Yep.
During that time, if Hasbro didn't do another thing, at least they did that.
That was huge.
I'm hoping that fans for the future will appreciate that, at least from Hasbro.
Well, and we do owe them a debt of gratitude for that, because that was a huge thing, and it still is for the Jaguar and the Lynx, and absolutely. So I think this has been very educational for me. I've really enjoyed this. I think, Jayson, I'm hoping you'll work with me. I'm going to do another video on the channel about the Hasbro era. And I think I'm going to need some of your help if you're willing to correspond with me.
Sure, be glad to. Like I said, I want their due. They
Yeah.
it feels like everybody glosses over it and passes
Well,
it by.
I think you're
And I
right.
appreciate what y'all have done here to have a little bit more. Here's what Hasbro was, and here's how we at least
It's the missing years. We all know about all this stuff, and it gets nebulous around the end of the 7800 all the way until a couple years ago. So I mean, there's a lot of missing years.
Yeah, that 50th anniversary thing was what really, when I started through that, going, that was it. That's all you did. One little thing, and Hasbro had Atari or something to that effect, and just kept going.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you took it personally because that's your era of Atari. You were there, you were trying to keep it alive, and then they glossed over it. I'm sure that hurt.
Well, and there's a bunch of people who were kind of heroes. They were like Lance Rehnquist was the guy that ran Video 61. And he was just a distributor. And at one point, he kept bill collectors. Everybody thought he was the Atari guy. They thought he was running Atari. He's like, I just sell this crap. I mean, bill collectors are coming after him. Oh, like people that were like, "Hey, you owe us money, Atari," and they're like, "What do you?" I'm just so, but he kept it alive, man. Yeah, he kept it alive in some ways too, and he was answering phone calls. Yeah. So it was a weird ending, and it's been a weird revival. And thank you for shedding light. And I salute you, fellow Atarian. Thank you for your hard work. And
thank you very much. I love the fact that there's so many channels out there devoted to Atari and the history of video games in general. Yeah, it's alive. There is a history to everything, and guys like y'all let us know about the video games. I mean, it's got to. Who would have thought that people would have cared about this in the early '80s? Would there ever be this sort of thing? We couldn't even imagine that.
Yep.
But absolutely. Again, thank you for having me on. And anytime you want to talk again, or ask me any questions or anything like that, or I can send you pictures of things I've picked up along the way.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm gonna take you up on that.
Well, you'll notice I'm wearing the Hasbro Interactive shirt. Yeah, it still fits after 24 years.
I was gonna point that out. Yeah, you dressed for the part today, so. So thank you so much, Jayson, for being on here. Very interesting stuff, and like I said, we'll have you on again sometime. And I need help with that video, so stay in touch.
Okay, John, Benny, nice to have met you.
Yep, nice to meet you. Later, Jayson. And that was the interview, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Jayson was fantastic to talk to. The guy is a true collector and really just one of us. And he's working with me on doing another video on the topic because he's right. The Hasbro era was just as important to Atari as any other, and it deserves to be documented and well known. Okay, guys. Well, that's it for this one, but please consider joining my Patreon. It's $5 a month, and you get access to behind-the-scenes videos and live streams. And check out Man vs. 7800 this Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific. This week, we'll be drawing winners for the big 2600-plus giveaway, live right on the stream. And of course, like and subscribe if you haven't already. With all that, I'd like to thank Jayson Hill once again for taking time to chat with us, and I'd like to thank you all for checking out the video. And remember, stay classy, Atarians.
Legend says that a multitude of armored beasts emerge from the dark core of the earth. They swarm to the surface, drawn by their master.